Thank you, Sunny. Thank you, Bill. Oh, I just got some good news, so I wanted to share it with you. Some of our beloved congregants, Leslie and Maddie, they just had their little baby girl, Dorothy. So everybody say together, congratulations, okay? 1, 2, 3, congratulations, congratulations. So that was exciting. I hope they're watching and get to know that. So I had an aha moment last Sunday. It was one of those okay, I'm just going to tell you. So I'm at the Super Bowl party after church, right? And I have all these awesome people around me. There's great food. And everybody's kind of in a tizzy or whatever about the game, right? And they're winning, losing, it's boring, frustration, all this stuff. And I realized something. I realized that sometimes ignorance really is bliss. Because I'm sitting there still trying to figure out which side I'm supposed to be rooting for, and everybody else is, having their experience. I thought, wow, what a great thing. So, so anyway, if you're here for the first time, or if you're here for the first time this year, our intention this year is about spirituality in action. It's about not only communing within with Spirit, but also putting our values and our ethics and our spiritual practice out into the world, being our highest spiritual self out loud. Does that sound good to everybody? Yeah? Okay. And so this month our talk series is on seeking the common good. Seeking the common good. And it's in part due to this amazing book by His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, called Beyond Religion, Ethics for a Whole World. This is an amazing book. And it reminded me of part of our philosophy's global vision, which says that we see a world in which each and every person lives in alignment with their own spiritual principles, emphasizing their unity on God and with each other. We see a world in which collectively and individually, we are raising ourselves to a higher level of consciousness and action. And what that means to me is that this common good must be an experience of oneness. It must be an experience of unity, moving forward together. In the Science of Mind textbook, it says on page 330 that we are all bound by one common law of love. We are all bound, meaning that we are all interconnected. We are all one. We are all together by one common law of love. The Dalai Lama, let me share this with you really quick. This is funny. So I'm teaching Essential Earnest class, right? And I was doing this reading in a textbook, in the workbook, I mean, and it said that this anthropologist, his name is Ashley Montague, and that he did some studies and found that every human being in the world, at their furthestness away from each other, is everyone else's 50th cousin. Isn't that interesting? Now, it might be kind of creepy if you're married, because you're like, ooh, but it reminded me of three things. The first thing I thought of is the oneness of all, right? And then the second thing is that we are all kin to one another. We are each other's kin. And the third thing, some of you might get this, but you know how Snoop Dogg calls everybody cuz? Now I know. He must have figured it out before us, right? Right. And so I think that's a really interesting thing. In this book, Beyond Religion, the Dalai Lama says that there is something seriously lacking in the way that we humans are going about doing things in the world today. He says, what is it that's lacking? He believes that it is an overemphasis on the external material world and an underemphasis on our own moral ethics and inner values. And so what I want to share with you this morning, I was inspired in meditating on the common good. And I was inspired by this kind of 3-step progression that felt so natural. And I want to share it with you. The first step is letting go. The second step is breaking open. And the third step, I feel like Reverend Margie can't see me. The third step is closing the gap. And so let's start with this first one is probably the hardest and biggest step that we're going to take in letting go, because we're going to let go of judgment. We're going to let go of our preconceived ideas of who a person is based on their age, their sex, their sexual orientation, their past, their hair color, their piercings, their rap sheet, their tallness or shortness, their whatever, all these ideas that we could have preconceived ideas about people. So who here is working on letting go of judgment? Yeah. Pretty much everybody. And we all should be, because here's the thing. One of my hobbies is studying brains. I just really love brains and how they work and kind of how they mess us up sometimes. And so naturally, our brain likes to give us a whole picture. So it will snap, in a snap, it will give us little details, put it together to create a full picture of something. So before we even try, before we even know it, we already have a judgment. It's not our fault. We used to be scared of, it was for survival back in the day. But we don't need to, was it for dinosaurs and all that kind of stuff, right? That we should have been scared of. So we already have this thing that the brain does on its own where it gives us a judgment. That's okay. We don't have to feel bad or like we're not spiritual enough or something. We say, okay, I have this judgment. Now is the time that I become aware of it and I allow my heart to make a different choice, a different decision. I allow my consciousness, the awareness that I have about the reality, the truth of life, that it is an expression of God, and so are we, to make a different choice about that judgment, make a different choice about that preconceived idea. Yes? Okay. And so I want to share a story with you. It can be a little graphic at times, but I think it really seals the deal on this judgment thing. So I'm reading a book called Barking at the Choir. It's Radical Forgiveness and Kinship. It's by Father Gregory Boyle. He's the founder of Homeboy Industries. So Father Gregory, he says yes to this day-long workshop. He didn't know it was good. He thought he was just going to be a keynote speaker, but no, it was like from 9 to 5. So he's trying to figure out how to fill his day. It's going to be 600 social workers, and they want him to come talk about gangs. So he has one of the people working at Homeboy Industries come with him. His name is Sergio. And he says, Sergio, can you just come and share your story? And so he does. And just a little bit of background on Sergio. This is the background that the 600 social workers are getting too. And so the background is he's in his early 20s. He was living on the streets for years. He was a heroin addict. He first started sniffing glue at age 6. He jumped into a gang at age 12. He did a couple years for stabbing his mom's boyfriend for trying to abuse him. So that's the backstory that we've all got. That's the backstory that these 600 people have. And so he goes and stands up on the stage, and he can already feel, with his tattoos and his, tough-looking guy, he can already feel the judgment, like it's palpable. And so he begins very reluctantly, and he says, I guess I better start by saying that me and my mom, we really didn't have a very good relationship. When I was 6, he said, when I was 6, my mom looked me in the eye and she said, why don't you just go kill yourself? You're a burden to me. At age 9, she took him to the southernmost part of Baja California to an orphanage and said, hey, I found this boy on the street. You want to take him? And it took 9 months for his grandmother to get it out of his mom where she left her child so she could come and rescue him. Not only that, but every single day of this boy's elementary school time, his mother beat him on the back with things you could imagine and so many things that you could not. And so every day his back was bloodied and scabbed, and so he would put one shirt on to soak up the blood. He would put another shirt on because it needed a little bit more, and he would wear a third shirt to cover it all up. And he did this well into his 20s. Even after he got into the gang and was able to break away from his mom, he wore 3 shirts because of his wounds, because of his scars. He didn't want anyone to see them. But then, at the end of his talk, at the end of him sharing his story, he stands up a little bit taller and he takes a deep breath. And he goes, but you know what? Now, after being at Homeboy Industries and learning, I love my wounds. I touch them. I honor them. Why? Because I can't help anyone else to heal their wounds unless I begin to heal my own. And there was an awe and a compassion that came over the crowd, and they were in tears. And what that reminds me is so many different things that we could learn from this story about Sergio, but what it reminded me instantaneously of is something that Reverend Juanita teaches, and I'm sure she teaches me all the time, and I'm sure many of you too. She reminds me that to treat everyone like I knew their story. She says, treat everyone like you already know their story, because if you knew their story, you would be more open, you would have compassion, and you would be coming at them from a place of wanting to understand. And that leads us to this next progression of breaking open, of letting down the walls, of letting down our guards, of becoming vulnerable and having the loving kindness that I know is locked within many of us to come out, to shine forth. It's this breaking open that author Parker Palmer talks about in an article that he wrote called The Politics of a Broken Heart. And he wrote this right after 9/11. And what he says is that those of us, he says, who among us has not seen evidence in our own lives or in somebody else's that compassion and grace can be the fruits of serious suffering, of serious heartbreak? Here, heartbreak becomes a source of healing, enlarging our empathy and extending our ability to reach out. And in this breaking open of our hearts, which I'm sure is what Sergio did and what these social workers did, there is this experience throughout the world, throughout religions, of being an open-hearted person, to breaking our hearts open. And one of the religions that I understand this from is from the Jews. They had to live and be taught and remember to have an open heart, live with an open heart despite the immense suffering and devastation that has occurred to them for centuries and centuries and centuries. And that's why it's no wonder that so many of the Jewish teachings talk about having a broken, open heart. There's this one story that I loved in researching this experience, and it's about a disciple who goes to his rabbi and he says, why does the Torah tell us to place these words upon our heart? Why doesn't it tell us to place these holy words in our heart? And the rabbi said, well, at this point, our hearts are not open. They have not broken open. And so we place these words on our heart until that moment that they could break open and allow these words within us. And so I want to invite us to do something. I want to invite us to place some words upon our heart. And so I want us to just say, I see you, I hear you, namaste, which means the divine within me recognizes the divine within you. I see you, I hear you, namaste. And let's just place those words on our heart. I see you, I hear you, namaste. Now they are on our heart, and when our hearts have the ability to break open, they will be there within us. Okay. Doesn't that feel good? Yeah. And that leads us to the last experience or kind of progression of this, which is the closing of the gap. The closing of the gap. Parker Palmer also says that what we desire in breaking free and breaking our hearts open is a realization, is closing the gap between where we are and where we know we could or should be. Between where we are and where we know that we could or should be. And so what I wonder for all of us is, where is the gap in our lives? Who are we holding at arm's length away from us? Who are we keeping out? Anybody have any ideas? As a society, what'd you say?
The homeless.
The homeless, okay. Probably politics, we keep other people at arm's length. Probably religions, some people do. What else? What keeps you at arm's length from others? Do you want to share? Is it too vulnerable? Huh? Smokers, right? So, see, you hear that? Instead of saying the common good of all is within each of us, we're like, only if you don't smell bad, right? Is that what we're saying? Right. But do you have a question, Stacey? Toxic people, right. But when we come from a place of realizing that there is an illusion of separation and we move into the realization of unification, we begin to see that who you are and who I am is so intricately connected, that we are truly one. And the questions we can ask to close the gap are curiosity. I want to understand you. I want to see where you're coming from. I want to hear your story. I want to know about you. Because after all, if we all look within and feel, we all want to be loved. We all want to be seen as valued. We all want somebody to have a little compassion for us, don't we? Because we've all been through a lot. We've all been through it. And so my charge for us this week, my spiritual practice that I'd love everyone to buy into this week, is to consider our social and ethical implications of our words and our actions, and to think in ways, speak in ways, and act in ways that are for everyone's highest good, for the good of all, for the common good. And when we begin to speak and act from this higher level of value, we begin to ripple out this into the entire universe. And so what I want to ask each of us, and I want you to ask this of yourself every day this week, and don't look for an answer. Don't let your brain try to trick you into knowing what it is either, because Spirit will inspire you, is if God is showing up as me, through me, how do I desire that to look in the world? If God is showing up through me, as me, how do I desire for that to show up? So let's just close our eyes for a moment and ask ourselves that inner self of ours that knows, that high self. If God is showing up as me, through me, what do I deeply desire that to look like? What do I deeply desire that to look like? And just moving into prayer, I feel and sense and know that every person in this room is the expression of a divine intelligence. I know it because I know that every part of our being, every cell, every atom, every quanta, every universe, every galaxy, every planet, every single bit of what we call life is God. It is a reflection of love. It is a reflection of peace, of understanding, of compassion, of the common good for all. We now, this community, is rising up, is putting our spirituality in action, is looking not only for the good of themselves, but for the good of all beings. We stand with spiritual authority and know the truth. We know truth, that God lives here, that good lives here, that love lives here now. Oh, and my heart is filled with gratitude for knowing this, for knowing truth, for being in a community of people who raise up in thought and who raise me up, and we raise each other up. And that ripples out into the universe. Oh, and so it is. So it is. Namaste. Namaste. Thank you.